Whistleblower claims this all started because Adam Schiff assumed he was going to be the director of the CIA in a Hillary Clinton administration.
Adam Schiff once believed he was destined for one of the most powerful positions in Washington, director of the CIA. That's the role he thought would be waiting for him if Hillary Clinton had won the White House. But when Donald Trump pulled off the upset, everything changed. According to newly revealed whistleblower testimony, Schiff's political dreams were crushed in an instant. And from that moment on, his focus shifted, from ambition to revenge. These claims suggest Schiff wasn't just doing politics as usual. He was looking for every possible way to undermine the Trump administration. Think about it. Years of preparation, expecting to walk into one of the highest intelligence offices in America, only to watch it vanish overnight. The whistleblower says that frustration fueled his every move. What looked like ordinary committee hearings or routine oversight may have actually been something far more personal. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep digging into stories like this. Now, let's get back to it. When the Russia collusion narrative began dominating headlines, Adam Schiff put himself front and center.
This program was never buying it, and we did not buy into Schiff's claims. Here's a conversation on Sunday Morning Futures back from 2019. Watch this.
The Democrats have made the mistake of staking the credibility of all this on Adam Schiff. The person that they put in charge of this investigation turns out is the one that helped start it by meeting with a person who walked out of Adam Schiff's office and became the whistleblower. And at the very same time that that's happening, as you mentioned, now there's an Inspector General report that comes out that says during the last impeachment hoax, the Trump-Russia one, Adam Schiff repeatedly made false statements to the American people about the FBI's act.
To Schiff, it wasn't just about investigating alleged ties between Trump and Moscow. It was about proving a point, keeping the pressure on. And according to those who worked closest with him, it was about using his platform to try and undo the election result that had crushed his own career plans. But that's where the story starts to unravel. And from here, things only get darker. Scandal after scandal began to swirl around Schiff until the spotlight shifted to something far more damaging. Allegations that he leaked classified Russiagate intelligence. Now, this wasn't just gossip whispered in congressional hallways. These were serious claims, suggesting that Schiff may have shared sensitive information with the media to keep the collusion narrative alive. According to reports, the Department of Justice wasn't looking the other way. Investigators were said to be digging deep, reviewing evidence, and even considering accountability measures against some of Washington's most powerful figures. The timing couldn't have been worse for Schiff. He was already under fire, with critics blasting him for misleading the public during the Trump investigations. And now, the idea that leaks of classified material could be pinned directly to his name raised the stakes to an entirely new level. And in Washington, leaking isn't just bad form. It's a crime that can put national security at risk.
Now, Adam Schiff was certainly out and about a lot throughout the last 3 years, saying that there is collusion in plain sight. And now we get the IG report, and we actually see the misconduct and what they call errors, fraud, whatever you want to call it. What is your reaction to what you learned from Michael Horowitz?
It wasn't just that Adam Schiff was out and about. He put out a report that said there was no FISA abuse by the FBI. That was false. He said that the FBI didn't fail to turn over exculpatory information. That was false. He said that the Steele dossier was not a central part of the FISA applications against Carter Page. That was false.
Schiff's opponents seized on this moment, arguing that he had crossed the line from politician to manipulator. Instead of safeguarding classified information, they claimed he was wielding it as a political weapon. For years, millions of Americans saw Adam Schiff as the face of the Russia investigations. He had built a reputation as a serious, no-nonsense lawmaker determined to protect democracy. But now that image was starting to crumble. Suddenly, it wasn't about protecting the country anymore. It was about whether one man, fueled by anger and ambition, had placed his own goals above the nation's security. And that's when people began to rewind the tape. Literally. They started digging into Schiff's old interviews, his speeches, and his promises to the American public. And what they found only made the cracks more impossible to ignore. One clip in particular, from a 2019 Sunday morning news show, stood out. At the time, it seemed like a bold statement. But when viewed today, with all the allegations swirling around him, it takes on a whole new meaning.
Whistleblower claims this all started because Adam Schiff assumed he was going to be the director of the CIA in a Hillary Clinton administration. Of course, President Trump won and those dreams were dashed. But how could Adam Schiff deny this when we have it on tape? He being at the time either the chairman of the intelligence community or later the ranking member of the intelligence committee in the House.
In that interview, critics warned Democrats had made a massive mistake by putting their credibility in Adam Schiff's hands. He wasn't just overseeing the investigation, they argued he was directly tied to the very whistleblower who helped ignite the impeachment drama. Reports claim that whistleblower had walked out of Schiff's office right before filing the complaint that shook Washington. But while impeachment headlines dominated cable news, another storm was quietly building. The Inspector General's report on the FBI's actions during the Russia investigation had just dropped, and it didn't look good for Schiff. For years, he'd been the loudest voice insisting Trump's team colluded with Moscow. He repeated it on television, he framed it in official hearings, and he spoke as if the evidence was undeniable. But the IG report told a very different story. It detailed misconduct, errors, and what many flat out called fraud in how the FBI handled the probe. For Schiff, it was a brutal contradiction. On one side, his repeated public statements about collusion being in plain sight. On the other, an official report suggesting the entire foundation of his claims was built on shaky ground.
He's over there on Chuck Todd and all these other Sunday shows saying that collusion between Trump and Russia is in plain sight. How do you deny that after you said that with the role as chairman of Intelligence Committee?
Well, first of all, I think that I'm so happy this is finally coming out and we actually have proof. And the number one thing that I think is different this time is the fact that the 302 report is now unclassified. And so Congress does have the information and the proof.
Schiff's credibility collapsed fast. He released a report denying FBI abuse, denying failures, and downplaying the Steele dossier. But the Inspector General proved all of it false. To critics, this wasn't a mistake, it was a cover-up. Then came whispers of mortgage fraud and soon an even bigger bombshell. A former Democratic staffer with decades in intelligence testified that Schiff believed Russia had hijacked the election and that leaking classified info was the way to topple Trump. When the staffer refused to join in, he says Schiff fired him.
Had so much impact. This ripped our country apart. What about the fact that it put a sitting president on defense? Every time he went anywhere, he had to say, I did not collude. What about the fact that it put his administration in jeopardy because so many people weren't sure if he did something wrong and they didn't want to join the administration? What about the rest of the world who looked at this and said, wow, did Donald Trump cheat and gain the election through collusion with Russia? I mean, there were so many elements that this made-up story from the Hillary Clinton campaign generated.
Think about that for a second. A career intelligence officer with decades of service shown the door because he wouldn't play along. To Schiff's critics, it was proof he wasn't just investigating. He was weaponizing his position, using secrecy and loyalty tests as political tools. But then came the detail that truly made jaws drop. The staffer testified that Schiff's obsession with Trump wasn't only about ideology. It traced back to personal disappointment. He had believed Hillary Clinton would name him director of the CIA. When Trump won instead, that dream collapsed overnight. From that moment, according to the whistleblower, Schiff's actions looked less like routine oversight and more like payback, fueled by ambition slipping through his fingers. And suddenly, his relentless attacks on Trump started to make sense. Week after week, Schiff went on TV shows like Chuck Todd's declaring collusion was in plain sight. But looking back, those words don't sound like careful legal analysis. They sound like the anger of a man who thought his future had been stolen.
Well, it put an entire cloud over this entire country. And that's just not right, Maria. That's not the way it works. And thank goodness all of this is finally coming out. But imagine someone so desperate for power, so politically motivated that in this case he, or certainly a she, but in this case he, Adam Schiff, would actually twist and contort the truth and come up with lies and tell us he had evidence that we were going to be amazed by if he's finally allowed to bring it to light. Well, he didn't bring it to light because there was nothing.
And when critics asked, if the evidence was really in plain sight, why didn't he hand it over to investigators? There was no clear answer. This wasn't just rumor anymore. The unclassified 302 report gave Congress hard proof, making it harder for Schiff to dismiss the story. His office quickly fired back, calling Kash Patel's claims false, unreliable, the words of a disgruntled staffer. But to critics, the denial sounded defensive, almost panicked. Some even argued it was projection, accusing others of the very tactics Schiff himself was being accused of. It was a dramatic twist. The man once trusted to guard the nation's intelligence now stood accused of twisting it for revenge, and the damage went far beyond Schiff's own reputation. As Maria put it, this wasn't just about one politician, it was about what his narrative did to the country. For years, a sitting president governed under a cloud of suspicion, forced to defend himself at every microphone with the same line: "I did not collude." That constant defense drained political capital, scared off potential staff, and cast doubt over every decision coming out of the White House. The shadow stretched even further. World leaders questioned whether Trump had cheated his way into power. Allies hesitated. America's standing weakened. At home, the story ripped the nation apart. Families, friends, even co-workers split into warring camps. Trump guilty or Trump innocent? Maria's words cut through the noise. A made-up story had divided America for years. And even when investigation after investigation found no collusion, Schiff refused to let it go. He went back on television again and again, repeating the same line: "Evidence of collusion is in plain sight." Collusion is in plain sight. Schiff repeated it over and over. But the question everyone kept asking was simple. If the evidence was so obvious, why didn't he hand it over? Why wasn't it ever shown in court, in hearings, or in any official report? The truth is, he never produced it. Instead, the narrative dragged on for years, shaping headlines and fueling endless partisan battles. While America faced real crises, immigration, national security, looming budget fights, Washington burned precious time on a story that had already collapsed under scrutiny. It wasn't about finding answers anymore. It was about keeping the drama alive. By then, the public was exhausted. The word collusion had been repeated so many times, it lost all meaning. Yet Schiff kept pushing it, as if repetition alone could make it real. While he clung to his claims, Congress was trying to avoid another shutdown, but the Russia saga still consumed the spotlight. What was once hyped as the scandal of the century had turned into a political weapon wielded by one man who refused to let it die.